How's it going? How's it going? It is Thursday, September 21st. And my Governor Iron Wheels, Governor Greg Abbott, declared an invasion at the southern border. And I don't know what it means, to be honest. There's not really a whole lot of stories I've read up on that tells me what this means. I mean, I know what declaring an invasion means, but I don't know what power grants to Texas that it didn't already have. So I asked the audience, what does that mean? Now, I do have a story from The Guardian that I'm going to read. I think it might highlight some of it, but I don't think it really answers the question. What powers does Texas have now that it didn't have before declaring an invasion? And I don't know. This is an area that I am unfamiliar with. Let's put it that way. I'm in unfamiliar territory, and I think even Texas is in the same boat, because we normally wouldn't have to do this, because normally we would have the federal government will step up to the plate and take care of the issue for us. And I keep on asking the same question: what are states' rights when the federal government fails to do their job? Because I clearly don't know. Clearly, a lot of people don't know. There's been at least one Supreme Court case that says it's up for the federal government, if they don't want to enforce it, eat a bag of rocks, pretty much. So according to The Guardian, which leans left, the Mexican or U.S.-Mexican border by Emerald Salem, Texas used the use of invasion clause against immigrants as racist and dangerous, right groups say. Probably should say human right groups, not just right groups. The Republican Governor Abbott invoked the state clause after likening immigrants to a public foreign enemy, but legal expert says it's unprecedented and extreme. I'm even saying it's unprecedented and extreme. Texas is challenging federal control over the policy of the U.S.-Mexico border by exploiting what it sees as a constitutional loophole around the definition of an invasion. But that's migrant rights activists sees as dangerous, ramping up fears with racist language. Did mention this leans left, didn't I? I mean, no one is owed to come to America. Sure, you have a right to asylum or seek asylum, but no one has the right to seek asylum in the United States. No one has the right of entry unless you're a United States citizen or a green card resident that has been vetted properly. But no one has a right to come to America that's not normally from America. There's nothing in the laws, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have the right to come to America. But yet people come to America, and you got people that doesn't see an issue at the border saying that we have to let them in. We can't treat them unhumane. We can't label them illegal even though they're illegal, because they're crossing the border illegally. I mean, I get there's laws that say it doesn't matter if you illegally enter, you could seek asylum. I get that, but at the same time, you should be barred from seeking asylum if you come here illegally. Especially if you've been kicked out and then you try it again, it should be immediately deported. Immigration policy has long been under the purview of the U.S. federal government, not individual states, since the U.S. Supreme Court ruled so in the landmark United States versus Arizona case in 2012. President Barack Obama was in charge at that time. But in November 2022, right-wing Republican governor, why can't you just say Republican Governor Greg Abbott, invoked the invasion clause found in the Texas and U.S. Constitution, likening migrants at the border to a public foreign enemy, and therefore gave him the power to enact his own border policy. Now, of course, that clause can mean many things. An invasion doesn't necessarily mean a foreign country trying to invade our country. They think examples of bandits. Let's say there was a bandit that was in Mexico. We're talking about 1800. Actually, not 1800. That'd be, 1800 or 1830. There's a bandits causing havoc and then going back to Mexico. Say the Texas could declare those bandits an invasion and be able to take care of the bandits rightfully so by declaring an invasion, because we didn't have the communications like we do now. Because we didn't have a powerful federal government. We only had the telegraph. The telegraph is only so quick. And it's, you can't really talk both ways with the telegraph. I mean, you have to send your message, wait for the reply, send your message, and vice versa, where now you just pick up the phone or just Skype someone and have a discussion right there. Let's say you're likening to a foreign enemy, therefore gave me, I already read that, Texas Civil Rights Project called the move a political ploy. I mean, anything that happens in the government is going to be political. Even passing a budget is political. Even giving military aid to foreign countries to fight their wars for them is a political ploy. So that just really doesn't mean anything. As you're calling immigrants an invasion extremely dangerous, says Roberto Lopez, senior advocate manager of Organizations Beyond the Border program, because he doesn't believe in borders, most likely. I mean, we've already had, 2 million people enter this year? I think that's the numbers right. Almost 2 million people entered our country illegally. I mean, if there were Russians and we were Ukraine, we'll call that an invasion. I mean, invasion doesn't necessarily have to be a military operation. When I say military operation, they don't have to go in gun blazing. They just have to occupy your land. And then they're doing that by sending numbers and numbers of men, and very few men and very few family unions, very few women and children, just mostly men. Now, there are women and children coming, of course. But there's a lot of pictures of just a stream of men walking single file into the country. You can't deny that. And they're military age men. Whether or not they are part of the military, it doesn't really matter. It's the fact that these people could have stayed home and fought a civil war to make their country a better country. Just like we did. We kicked out the Brits. Let's see here. Lopez added, we have seen so many shootings, more on the rise of hate crimes against migrants. This is all connected to the rhetoric of associating people who are seeking safety with being literally attacked on the United States. That's just giving a lot of fire and energy to militia groups and people who are filled with hate. I mean, I'm not filled with hate, but I'm also not part of, I am part of a militia because an armed society, Second Amendment, which makes everyone part of the militia. But I'm not part of the militia group that they're talking about. And I'm not denying that these people exist. They definitely do exist. There's people out there that call themselves militia and are full of hate. But there's also people like me who understands that letting people into our country unchecked, just letting the floodgates open, is also not the right solution either. Paying these people in our tax dollar, paying them our tax money to take care of them, to feed them, to house them, give them some cash, free phone, in the hopes that they come back to a hearing to see whether or not they'll be deported or they could stay. Dear Abbott is already seeking to take the Texas border control into his own hands as evidenced by the state's recent announcement of the new border force that could allow its agents to arrest, apprehend, and detain a person crossing the Texas-Mexico border unlawfully. Unlawfully. There's the key right there. They're breaking the law by going over our arbitrary line, which is a criminal action. They're already breaking the law, and you expect them to follow other laws once they're breaking the law? If it gets past the state legislature, and with the conservative majority both in the Texas and state house and the Senate, the likelihood is high. I don't know if that made it through. Abbott has made an interpretation of the invasion clause clear, and at the time of announcing his border force, Abbott says, I invoke the invasion clause of the United States Texas Constitution to fully authorize Texas to take the unprecedented measures to defend our state against an invasion. I'm using the constitutional authority and authorization and executive orders to keep our state and country safe. Let's see, I'm invoking blah, blah, blah. Deploy the National Guard to safeguard our borders, to repel and turn back migrants trying to cross the border illegally. Deploying the Texas Department of Public Safety to arrest and return to the border immigrants who cross illegally, and deploy DPS to arrest illegal immigrants for criminal activities, build a border wall in multiple counties on the border, run gunboats to secure the border, designate Mexican drug cartels as a foreign terrorist organization. I don't really agree with this one. Oh, that's an image. I don't really agree with designating cartels as a foreign terrorist. I understand the sentiment, but you have to first have a legal definition of a terrorist, and I don't think the United States really has one other than they're the bad guys. Enter into a compact with other states to secure the border. Enter into agreements with foreign powers to enhance border security and provide resources for border counties to increase their efforts in response to the border invasion. But legal language Abbott is citing is not that simple, according to Barbara Hines, a law professor at the University of Texas and the founder of Law School Immigration Clinic. I mean, if it was simple, he would have done this after he won his re-election. Hines called the state justification for creating its own immigration laws unprecedented and extreme. But what should Texas be doing? What should Texas be doing? What should New Mexico be doing? What should Arizona be doing? And what should California be doing? Which are the four border states that are along the Mexican border. What should they be doing when the federal government fails to do their job? Every time I have one of these immigration videos, I keep asking that question. I don't have an answer. No one's been able to answer me, or they just never get that far into my videos to answer that. What should Texas be doing when the federal government fails to do their job? Because I don't have an answer. I mean, I really don't have an answer. Let's see. Federal immigration law is a federal issue, not based on Texas Constitution. Hines said, Article 4 of the Texas Constitution, the governor shall be the commander-in-chief of the military forces of the state, except when they are called into actual service of the United States. He shall have the power to call the fourth of the militia to exercise the laws of the state to suppress insurrections and repel invasions. Abbott argued the increase of migrants at the border merits of drastic actions, such as establishing a state police force specifically to rein in immigration. Migrant rights groups say that people crossing the border, many of them who are seeking legally claimed refugee status, do not constitute as an invasion. But why did they not seek refugee status with the first country they go into? Isn't Mexico a safe state? Or is it only a safe state when we're talking about tourism? But when we're talking about refugee or asylum seeker, it's a dangerous state. Seems like these people want it both ways. Let's see here. I already read that. Instead, They say such language is racist and inflammatory. In 2019, white supremacists attacked Walmart in El Paso, seeking to kill Latino to fueled by anti-immigration rhetoric. The gunman killed 23 people. That was a very sad, tragic event. But that's not Governor Abbott's fault. He's trying to protect Texas. He's trying to protect a fragile system of democracy within Texas, or I should say, Republic of Texas. And when you get an influx of people, and you only have so many resources to go around, that puts a strain on our resources, puts a strain on the safety nets that are designed to help Americans. We're not talking about a couple of hundred a day. We're talking about thousands upon thousands a day cross our borders illegally. So it's not racist. I know that they try to paint this as racism, but it's not. Maybe nationism, but other than that, let's see here. Many legal scholars believe right-wing argument over the invasion clause in Texas Constitution is neutralized by the supremacy clause in the United States Constitution that states the federal constitution and federal laws generally take precedence over state laws and even state constitutions, according to Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institutions or Institute. But the U.S. Constitution word invasion is mentioned twice, once in the Article 1, Section 10, and again in Article 4, Section 4, that gives Abbott and some right-wing, I get it, you're a left-wing rag guardian. Not everything has to be right-wing activists. He is a governor that's trying to protect his state when the federal government is failing to do their job. That doesn't make them a right-wing activist. And some right-wing activists hope that their arguments might prevail on the conservative Supreme Court. The first instance, the U.S. Constitution specifically limits the power of the state to keep troops like Operation Lone Star at the border force unless invaded. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage to keep troops or ships of war in a time of peace entering any agreement or compact with other states with a foreign power or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger that will not admit of delay. People crossing our borders en masse is an invasion. Regardless if they have the legal precedence to do so, the fact that they're crossing outside of the port of entries makes this an invasion. It may not be a military operation, but it's still an invasion. They're an invasive species. I don't really want to say species, but it's kind of like if you have an invasive species coming into an area where they're not normally there, they consider that an invasive species. I'm not trying to relate people to plants and animals that go into an ecosystem, but that's kind of where I'm going, where I'm saying not everything has to be a military operation to be considered an invasion. When the invasion is mentioned for the second time, the Constitution more broadly says that the federal government is responsible for protecting the states against an invasion. The United States shall guarantee every state in the Union a republic form of government and shall protect each of them against an invasion on the application of legislature or the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. Hines explained that although the word invasion is mentioned twice in different contexts, there is a theory of law that the same term or word in the Constitution should mean the exact same thing if repeated. The key question is likely be whether or not an invasion in this context means solely by another state or armed force. Abbott policy is likely, or like his potential border force, is the extinction initiative Operation Lone Star, has already been questioned as illegal by civil rights groups. Civil rights groups, others. What the hell does that mean? They have faced legal challenges by civil rights advocacy groups and an investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. In such case against Texas materialized, moves up through the courts, especially all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, it's possible the U.S. will have to revisit the question and who gets control of the border. Some say that Texas lawmakers in favor of state control of the border want, especially as the current Supreme Court is dominated by hardline conservative judges. Once again, you already have left-wing biases. Just say conservative judges or constitutional judges. Texas far right. The Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said as much as a Senate committee hearing on the subject. We're in uncharted territory as far as knowing what states can do because the states have never had to wonder or really test this, Paxton said. So I think a part of this is going to be we're going to have to figure out where are the areas that we want to test and what part. Oh, and that's part of why I've been saying for 2 years we should test U.S. versus Arizona. We should test to see if states can protect themselves given the circumstances that we're in that we've never been in before. Hines says the Supreme Court has not respected the president in other situations, for example, the abortion case. This is a state legislation that has been willing to pass unconstitutional laws to test them. I guess if you don't agree with the law, it's unconstitutional, but the law is the law. And once they're contested, then you can say it's unconstitutional, I guess. I'm hopeful that the conservatives, as the Supreme Court is, that they're going to respect the president. It's unheard of that the states could enforce federal laws as to who is entering the United States without permission and who's not, and to create a state trespass law for people entering the United States that has been sole federal power since the 1800s. Once again, what should states do when the federal government fails to do their job? We sign a contract that they're going to protect us, they're going to uphold the laws, but when they don't enforce the laws that they promise to uphold the laws, the contract has been reneged because a certain president is president, regardless of which party they belong to. If the federal government's not doing their job, what should states be doing? Or what should Texas be doing in this case? I clearly want to know. With that being said, that is my video for today. And have yourself a wonderful day, morning, or evening.